Wham! Talk 1600. You're catching the drift. Conservative talk. Intelligent conversations on local, state, and national issues with Gary Wellings, chief editor of the Current newspaper and Current Online. Join in the conversation at 734-822-1600. And now, your host, Gary Wellings.
And good Saturday afternoon. Thanks for tuning to Catch Our Drift. Joining me in studio, Ed Bonderenka.
Hey, happy Saturday.
Ipsy Ed, good to have you on board. I'm a little flustered. We were in the outer room debating with Brandon, and of course, like you said, you don't even need coffee. No, I got you all jacked up. Thank you, Brandon, very much.
Almost forgot the newspaper.
I did. I almost did. Well, welcome to the show, and what we do on The Drift every Saturday is go over the news that we put on thedailydrift.com. And if you're not going there, you should. www.thedailydrift.com. It's the news you need to know. So, Ed, you came in, sat down, and you said, what do you mean, what Islamic involvement in the Florida shooting?
Yeah, basically, I understand he's got the keffiyeh on, pretty much like the scarf you wore into the studio today.
That's right. I do. What is it called? You called it a...
I believe it's called a keffiyeh.
I thought it was a shamag or something. I can't remember what. But anyways, yeah.
No,
so
if
I
you're
do
Jewish,
wear that.
it's that. But if
is it? Okay. Well, maybe it is.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'm Jewish. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I do wear that. And oddly enough, I just told Linda... And,
hey, you're pointing your finger with the ISIS sign, too. I just saw that, yeah.
I'm putting up the number one. We're going to get to that in a minute. Gosh, can I get my intro done here? But, I laughed to Linda and Pastor Rick. I said, I'm not wearing this if I go to Washington, D.C., because I don't want to cause any trouble. But, well, let's take care of a little business. Our sponsor this half hour is St. Joe's Bariatric. They're going to be doing an educational seminar. If you're looking to lose weight, you have had some problems losing weight, bariatric surgery is one of the options you can look at. And they're going to be doing an educational seminar January 11th. That's next week, actually, at St. Joseph Mercy Livingston, which is at 620 Byron Road in Howell. 620 Byron Road in Howell. So check them out, St. Joseph's. St. Joe's Health Bariatric. So it's a good place to go if you're really having a problem losing weight. And after the holidays, who isn't? But I think this is for, so check them out, and you can see them in the Current. And if you haven't seen the Current lately, you can go to currentonline.com. That's COURANT online.com. So check it out there. Okay, so the big news yesterday was the shooting, right after you and I had lunch yesterday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep. And go home, and all of a sudden it flares up on the news that 5 people have been shot, 13 wounded. The numbers come in and they're all confused and nobody knows. It's a developing story, and it's still developing as of this morning. But, initially they said it was a guy coming in from a flight in Canada and that there was a handgun in his bag, which, I thought, you're not supposed to even own handguns in Canada. How did he check a handgun on a bag? Yeah.
Not carry on, check in.
Okay.
You can carry check-in. Yes.
Yeah, but
so basically,
in Canada,
you retrieve your baggage.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry, Canada.
Canada, so I was thinking to myself, what's going on here? So I ended up not being from Canada, right? So, but anyways, it was very confusing, and they captured him alive. I guess he laid down. They got hold of him, and all of a sudden, everybody and their brother starts Googling and looking at his Facebook, and there's pictures out there, and some of the pictures of him don't look like him. And then, of course, the big spin always comes from the media and the authorities, right? So CNN got caught whitening his skin.
Yeah.
Right? So there's your first one. And then one of the pictures that ultimately came out, and it's the one you're seeing mostly now, is this guy with the scarf, right? The Palestinian-looking scarf. But it's a military one, right? And this guy was in the military at one point, holding up the ISIS finger like you were joking about, So is there some connection to terrorism? Obviously, it's terrorism, whether it's related to Islamic terrorism or not. I frankly, I think the rule is more than one incidence, right? And if you killed 5 people, there's 5 incidences right there. So they're going to call it terrorism. Whether it ends up being Islamic terrorism or not is a different story. What do you got there?
It's a keffiyeh. I finally got something right.
So
yes.
It's funny. We're at Tim Hortons, right?
Yeah.
And I've got mine on, and I got a couple of odd looks from people because I had my little black hat on that kind of looks like maybe I'm a Muslim or something, but I don't know. But it's just strange that all of a sudden we had it. And these are these lone wolf things. People, you got to be out there and you got to be ready. I'm just thankful that it was only, not dozens and dozens of people who ended up being killed this way.
My take on it, I have a couple of takes on this. One is that basically they locked down the whole airport long after they got this guy. These people are being forced to stay in the terminal, miss flights, miss cruises. Most people flying to Fort Lauderdale, it's to take a cruise. And I understand security, but it seemed like way overkill on there. That's one. Two, airport, gun-free zone. Not for this guy. Okay? So basically it becomes, what do you call it, shooting fish in a pond, in a barrel. Frankly, people should be allowed to carry right up to the counter. If you don't want them to carry on the plane, fine. But the problem is you can carry in your carry-on, and I've done it, but you can't conceal carry up to the counter.
You can carry on your carry-on?
I'm sorry. Did I say carry-on? Excuse me. I meant checked.
Okay.
Yes. And I have an interesting story.
Wow, dude, you're boss.
Where I almost went to jail for the way I handled.
Yeah.
I mishandled a round in the chamber that was in a pistol that I was putting on board. But regardless of that, once again, gun-free zone. That's part of the big story here. Is that all these people? Florida is one of the first carry states, shell carry states. In fact, I think it's the first shell carry state, and excellent results. And yet here we have a situation where a number of citizens would have been able to defend themselves and couldn't. That, to me, is a big story right there. You won't see that on CNN.
Yeah, well, it's a soft target, and they know that the soft targets at the airport are now the loading and the unloading, right? And so what are you going to do? I mean, what's the next step? Are we now going to have plenty of personnel in the baggage area? Normally, once you pass through and the doors close and you're in the baggage area, it's like nowhere else.
Start looking like an airport in Italy with 50 cals mounted outside the gate.
It's just one of those things. Or will they just no longer allow people to carry, even in their checked bags? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I never carry through an airport just because I don't want to deal with the hassle. That's just nothing I'm going to deal with.
Well, I was one time I was very, very discreet, and I went up. You had to go to the same counter where you check in skis and other sporting goods, oddly enough. And I have a pistol in my luggage. Oh, firearm over here. Yeah,
I'm trying to be quiet about it.
Happens every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, call into the show, 734-822-1600, if you want to get in on this discussion or anything else. We're going to be moving on now and talking about the intel. Allegedly, we have Congressman Walberg calling in at 2:30, so we'll be able to get some updates for the new Congress starting off and some of the things that have gone on there. But let's move on to the intel reporting. And does it seem biased to me? And this is what we were debating with Brandon, this debate of how much credit do you actually give to our current intel services? And there was a couple of surveys out through Twitter and Facebook I saw that was asking people, do you believe the WikiLeaks guy or do you believe our intel services? And frankly, it was like 70% people were saying we're believing the WikiLeaks. And that's disturbing because, here, this is our country. This is our intel service. And have they been politicized to the point where we've lost faith in them?
Well, they have been politicized. We know that. We know that under the Obama administration, they have been horribly politicized. They and pretty much the military staff, for that matter. It doesn't mean the grunts. Doesn't mean the people on the ground necessarily are.
Right.
It's sad. I don't know which way to go on it, frankly. I look at some of these faces and I say, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I don't know you. I don't know whether I trust you or not. I don't know if you're going to speak to the American people as a lie or not. We know that Trump said he had inside information. We know that we haven't seen the inside information that Trump had either.
Right, yeah, and that was Brandon's good point.
Right,
he said, I've got something, and then again, we never saw anything. So, and to Brandon's point, Donald Trump does that a lot. We're not getting always a full story, or we're getting a half story out of him, and to that point, that is true. But Derek, let's go with track one, and I think this is Catherine Herridge out of Fox News talking about.
She's good.
Yeah, she's probably one of the experts as far as media-related people, and she always seems to be pretty fair and honest when it comes to that. Play track one for us, Derek.
I want to emphasize to people that there's a very interesting finding, and it basically says that they wanted to hurt Hillary Clinton, but at a certain point they realized they felt she would win, and at that point they decided to change the focus of their operation to gather information that would hurt her future presidency. And it reads in part, just one second here, when it appeared to Moscow that Secretary Clinton was likely to win the election, the Russian influence campaign began to focus more on undermining her future presidency. So the Russians didn't feel their campaign had been successful in damaging her chances of winning. And at a certain point, they decided to take the information that they had and try and leverage it against her in the future.
Right, so for me, the scary part out of that was even Russian intelligence, because you always want to think, oh, my God, they're the baddest of the bad. They believed our stupid media-biased polls, too, right? So it works. So who's the best propagandists on the planet? Our own mainstream media, because they even fooled Trump or Putin and all his people.
That's a good point. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me that here is, maybe allegedly the second best intelligence people in the world, and if you include ours to be the first. They were fooled by our mainstream media polling as well. And doesn't that just blow you away?
Well, one take, yes, it does. But one take I see here is that, they wanted something to hold over Hillary. And I remember hearing Hugh Hewitt early on saying she cannot be elected president. She has been compromised. Everything on her server, basically there are certain things you can't do to get a top secret clearance because of the possibility that you might be blackmailed. One of them is being a homosexual. There's certain financial things. If you have certain financial disparities, you can't get a top secret clearance because you might be blackmailed. And here this woman had her goods exposed to the world on her private server. She was compromised. And this exactly spells that out. The Russians knew they would have her.
Yeah. Yeah, and thankfully, that the American people were smart enough to see that as well, I think. Because you know what?
And how did the American people see that?
Yeah, when it comes to influencing, and I guess this is the part that bothers me a lot. It seems like the left and the media are trying to make this out, and it's a delegitimization of the Trump administration. Listen, it was a fair election. If anything, it was biased against Trump. He overcame all odds of the mainstream media, the GOP elite, and the DNC, and still won, right? Yeah. And yet, here they are now trying to delegitimize him in some fashion or another. And this is what I'm astounded that even after the media took the beating that they took in this election, they're still hammering away at him, trying to follow Obama's lead and the left's lead to continue this delegitimization. He's appointed cabinet members, and I think for most of them I'm pretty happy with. I wouldn't say I'm 100%, but for the most part I'm willing to at least acknowledge them and say, let's give them a shot.
I'd give Brandon this. Okay, Brandon, you listening? I'm still open about Trump, but I am pleasantly surprised more and more every day. His cabinet selections, when he did the thank you tour, and I think I've said this before, when he did the thank you tour, I said, oh my goodness, it's all about him aggrandizing himself. And yet the things I heard him say, I was impressed with his leadership and to some degree his humility in this thank you tour. He was thanking the American people, not claiming how great he was. He's done things that I cringe at. He's tweeted stuff I cringe at, and yet he is not Hillary, and I want to give him a shot. I do not want to I don't want to join in the voices delegitimizing him at the moment. I want to give him a fair shot.
Right. Let's take a call from Will in Ann Arbor. Will, welcome to the show.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to back up to what you were talking about with the Russians having information on Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Something that struck me when I first heard the report, and again when you just mentioned it, was they talked about wanting to switch to using the information against her presidency in the future. Does that mean that tells me that they have more than what's been released?
Yeah, I imagine they would. Yeah, I imagine that, had Hillary succeeded, they would have been able to twist her. And let's frankly be honest. I'm not sure that Russia really wanted Trump. I mean, she sold them how much of our uranium supply while Secretary of State? How much more would she have sold them if she was a president, especially if they had dirt on her?